product provided by Square Enix. Forgotton Anne is a heavily story-driven game all about making choices and the consequences your choices have. It's really a game filled with mystery and surprises. For that reason, you might find this review a bit vague at times, but trust me when I say going in as blind as possible is well worth it with this game. Forgotton Anne is available on PS4, Xbox One, and PC for $20. Forgotton Anne has you playing as this young woman named Anne. She lives in this magical world called the Forgotten Land. In this world, everyday items are lost or forgotten in the human world. Objects like socks, old pictures, and household items end up here and gain a living personality. Think of the Wasteland world from Epic Mickey, except instead of being old cartoons, they're now everyday objects that come to life. It's in this mysterious world that Anne finds herself in the position of power with a grand conflict between the people of this world. She has to trust her judgment and hope that she knows the right thing to do. This brought me a great amount of internal conflict and guilt while playing the game. Where games like The Walking Dead or Life is Strange warn you when you're going to do something that's going to affect the overall narrative, this game doesn't do that. Instead, it tells you afterward. This often left me wondering what would and wouldn't affect the overall narrative of the game and be astonished by the results later on when the climax finally hit. Forgotton Anne has a story that won't easily be forgotten, one that will make you want to replay the game as soon as you finish it. It's filled with a great cast of characters, each with their own unique quirks and personalities, that's including the villains who actually have a reasoning for their way of thinking. Like I said at the start of this review, don't look up too much about this game's story and premise. You'll be rewarded for going in blind with this game. The gameplay for this title is part puzzle game with some light platformer elements. At first glance, the game actually looks like an old school point and click adventure game, and though it is an adventure game, it feels much more like a casual platformer. Anne can walk, run, and jump, and that's about it for movement. The rest of the game has her interacting with the environment with the use of a device on her wrist that can activate switches and other platforms. Once again, I'm being vague on purpose. This nifty little device is how you'll navigate just about all of the puzzles in the area, including some of the platforming sections. The difficulty of these puzzles were rarely challenging enough for me to get stumped in the game. The most difficult puzzles just included some resource management and being able to follow a flowchart of pipes. The game itself is rather linear and easy to follow, with only a few sections of it having you backtrack slightly. Despite it being so linear though, the game does reward curious gamers who try to explore more hidden off areas. Usually breaking away from the linear path rewards gamers with new characters that would add on to the lore of the world and providing new perspectives on the conflict. Additionally, this is how you'll also find objects called mementos that add in more info to the world. They're like second narratives to the bigger picture. This is also where a lot of the post-content and replay value lies. Once you finish your first adventure, you're encouraged to go back and try to find the remaining mementos and choose different options in the second playthrough. Learn and see what you could have done differently and how it affected the grander story. Forgotton Anne is an absurdly cinematic game that completely sells its story-driven gameplay. It features this hand-drawn animation art style that makes the game look like both an old-school western cartoon and an anime. At some points it even looks like cutscenes from a Philips CDI game, only better. Actually, speaking of those cutscenes, they're actually in this game as cutscenes too, though with much better drawn characters this time. Our main character Anne looks like, and in many aspects, is a parallel to Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite. The only time I found the art style to have a fault was when the camera zoomed in really close. A lot of the game's visuals would show a bit of artifacting when zoomed in so closely, most specifically the lines around characters. Outside of these moments, the game looks stunning and marvelous. The introduction of the game felt like watching an old Ghibli film with its cinematic camera pans as the credits began to roll in. Some of the coolest scenes with the visuals outside of these cinematic moments were when the game blended in primary 2D visuals with 3D models to create an interesting perspective on a primarily flat world.
Good day, Forgotton.
Oh, Madam Enforcer.
Inspector, I will continue the investigation at the theater.
Maybe I should come with you, in case you need backup.
That won't be necessary.
Never mind that. You're here now. And you're the enforcer now. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. You should really come visit us at the tower.
Forgotton Anne features a completely voiced cast of characters, and boy do they nail their parts. Everyone from the pistol cop with a very butch-like attitude to the old but warm-hearted blanket with the personality of a loving grandmother. They all do an absolutely fantastic job. The cast of characters have a vast variety of personalities that only get better sold off by the great voice acting. The soundtrack for the game features this heavy use of strings that hypes up this sense of dangerous curiosity. Composer Peter Du did a solid job creating the soundtrack that accompanied this dystopian machine background of the game. In fact, a lot of the music reminded me of the Vulture theme from Spider-Man Homecoming, that very similar, almost menacing instrumental. My only issue with the music was that at times it wouldn't transition very well between cutscenes and gameplay. Oftentimes the music would just stop or cut out as the game tried to force a cutscene or a scripted scene to play out. Those moments broke the immersion a bit, but didn't completely taint the experience at least. Forgotton Anne is a marvelous experience that will fill you with wonder as much as it will guilt. It'll test your moral compass and have you question what you think is right and wrong. You find yourself in the middle of a conflict within a world you spend pretty much your entire life isolated in. You're going to make choices that you'll agree with and others that you'll regret heavily, and it'll encourage you to replay the game as soon as you finish. The challenge for the gameplay is minor, though enough to keep you engaged in wanting to finish puzzles quickly just to know what happens next in the story. Wrap this all up in a charming art style with a greatly appreciated, fully voiced cast of characters, and you end up with a grand 7-hour adventure. At its current $20 price tag, I have no problem recommending Forgotton Anne, especially for those of you that love your mystery dystopian future games. It's heavily focused on that, and it nails it perfectly. That does it for my review of Forgotton Anne for the Xbox One, PS4, and PC. If you have any questions about the game or games coming out in the future that you want me to review, let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, then give it a like, share it with your friends on social media, it helps the channel grow, and I greatly do appreciate it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.